week, and more about the plans for the future is Dan Steele from the RFL. Good evening, Dan.
Hi, Ronald. How are you doing?
Oh, good afternoon, I should say. I suppose it's only 20 past 4. I'm very well, thank you. Just tell us a bit more about this event that you had during the week. Was it Thursday night where you were chatting to businesses, telling them or asking what rugby league can do for them?
That's right, yeah. Essentially, we had a business-to-business event at the Grange Hotel, St Paul's. It was organised by all the key stakeholders in London Rugby League. So it was Harlequins Rugby League, London Scholars and the RFL. Essentially, the idea was to showcase rugby league and show what rugby league can do for businesses both in the capital and nationally, and essentially advertise rugby league to future potential commercial partners.
Well, I mean, I've got a big programme on Wednesday night at 9 till 10, which you're going to be part of, live from the South Bank, talking about the future and taking things forward. How is, in terms of health-wise and that business perspective, rugby league in the capital? It is an emerging sport. It's not what you would call a mainstream sport in London. When you go to events like this, how well received is the sport?
Well, the sport's very well received. I think it's very familiar to people in the capital and a very popular sport. One thing that we do need to try and prove is that the rugby league is relevant to people in London and people in the capital. It's so traditionally seen as a northern sport, and that's understandable, but rugby league is relevant to all the people in the capital right now, and rugby league's in probably the best health it's ever been in the capital. So often the health of the sport is perceived or measured by the success of the Super League club, and obviously Harlequins Rugby League aren't doing too well on the pitch at the moment, but the sport at the grassroots and in plenty of other areas is doing really well in London at the moment.
And the aim of this sort of venture at the moment is to target 12 to 25-year-olds out in the East End. Is the East End a quiet area in terms of rugby league?
Well, there has been some history there of rugby league in the past. So the London Broncos were based at the Valley some years ago, and there have been obviously some fairly high-profile players who have come from East London, but obviously give people the idea that there is some potential for rugby league in East London. Greenwich Admirals down in Greenwich and Hainault Bulldogs in Barking and Dagenham, two amateur clubs that are doing their best to battle to survive in, as you suggest, a very crowded marketplace for sport in London. And really, there's been very little done over there since to help those clubs and to build on some good development work done by the Broncos back in the day. Since what would it have been, the late 90s, the turn of the century. So it's been, I think it's been overdue, and there's some really exciting opportunities there to spread rugby league.
And you've had Boris Johnson as well commenting on rugby league as well. I mean, how did all that come about? Is he a fan, or did you have to teach him what's happening?
I don't know how much Boris Johnson knows about rugby league, but I think he's got potential as a player, having seen him play that England game.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That charity football game where he made the tackle with his arms.
Yeah, the infamous tackle. So I don't know how much he knows about rugby league, but the Great London Authority and Boris Johnson have been very supportive of this particular programme. It started out actually with a sponsorship deal from the Hard Rock Cafe London, who've been really supportive of rugby league over the last year or so.
They support the junior section, don't they?
That's right, they support the junior player pathway in London, and they very kindly offered to extend their sponsorship with us to develop rugby league in East London, and then we followed it up with drawing in some match funding from Sport England, and then more recently, as was announced on Thursday last week, the Mayor of London's participation fund chipped in as well, so we've got a really good fund there to actually go in and do some really meaningful work over there. We're targeting the 4 of the Olympic boroughs, so we're targeting Hackney, Newham, Barking, Dagenham and Greenwich, and as you say, we're looking to target 12 to 25-year-olds, and we're really trying to get inactive kids who have no affiliation really to any other sports or sport in general, and get them active through rugby league and try and create some lifelong rugby league participants who will really help us lay some roots in London.
Now, we were talking about the Women's World Cup a bit earlier on today, and I sort of mentioned the cyclic thing of, you know, if you have a sport that is doing well, it's easier to secure the funding. That means you get more money into your sport, which means you can then do better, etc., etc., etc. How, I mean, the key is, I guess, to just slowly boost certain areas to try and raise that cyclic circle and to try and just keep boosting it as far as you go. Like you say, Harlequins aren't doing well at the moment, but I guess these little bits are just put in place, I guess, so that when things start to happen, all the ground structure is there to then push it up.
That's right. You can't. You can't really change things overnight. I think you've got to really try and grow incrementally. I think any kind of dramatic growth in participation is usually fairly superficial. So I think for me, it's about building slowly. Well, building as fast as we can, but that realistically means building sustainable growth means probably building fairly slowly, incrementally. And we've got activity in North London with the Scholars. We've got lots of community activity and development work going on in the southwest with Harlequins Rugby League. South London Storm do great work down in Croydon. But there's very little in East London, so I think that was the key aim for this, is let's try and initiate activity in kind of 4 key areas in London, so that we do start building that groundswell. We start building a large pool of junior players who in turn we hope to have a generational effect. They start having the kids of their own and bringing them up in Rugby League. So that, as you say, when Harlequins Rugby League do move forward and have probably a more successful year than they've had at the moment, that we can really capitalise on all the work that's been done.
I'll probably ask you this question on Wednesday night as part of our London Rugby League live programme, but for me the key is, I've talked to you about sort of numbers of people that are playing the game, and you sent us some stats for Wednesday's programme about the increase over the last 3 years of Harlequins' licence period. You can have as many players playing as you like. I guess the crucial thing is the infrastructure. If all of a sudden something was to collapse, you need the rest of the sport to sustain it. From what you look at, and the way that the sport is aligned in the capital, would you say that structure and that process is the best it's ever been?
I've been in London for 6 years, and it's certainly been the best it's been in the period that I've been down here. You look at rugby league over the previous decades in London, and I don't think we've ever had as meaningful level of activity as we've got currently going on. The key is that we managed to sustain that investment, and sponsors such as Hard Rock Cafe London, who've come in and sunk money into rugby league, are a key to that. We've got to keep the investment into the sport, otherwise all the hard work we've done over the last decade will probably go to waste. So there is a lot about commercial investment. There's also a lot we need to do right now to try and help the clubs and the volunteers who are actually out there doing the grassroots work, because if we can upskill them and help support them, then if we do have a dip in funding and dip investment, the infrastructure of the game will stay strong, and the sport will stay in good health.
Dan, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday night. We shall have a good chat about the future of the game, and fingers crossed that Quins can improve their thing, but it looks like at the moment all the structure's there. See you Wednesday.
See you then.
Thank you. Dan Steele of the RFL down here in London, and sounds like things are going in the right direction. More of that and chat like that on our London Rugby League live programme, live on the South Bank in front of a live audience. You can come down and be part of it as well. The Doggett's Coat and Badge, Wednesday 9 till 10 here on BBC London 94.9. I did as well forget, I've done it again, our trivia. I didn't give you the answer in terms of which 3 players have all been sent off 8 times during Premier League matches. I promise I will give you the answer after news headlines with Kevin.